When I heard that Roger Scruton hunts, I was confused. How can you kill animals for fun, but then talk about morality? Well, it turns out there's a very interesting answer.
Many of the pro-choice people actually have no basis to argue against killing animals. The same arguments that allow you to kill a fetus allow you to kill a fox. Most philosophers, most moral systems, most people oppose murder and yet defend killing in various ways. So even before you get to hunting, if you think about all moral systems that ever actually existed and run societies, all of them had some sort of opposition to murder, and all of them allowed killing. And just a simple example, we live today in liberal democracies. Most liberal democracies have no death penalty, and yet, and in general, they think that murder is a very bad thing, and yet they allow killing in certain situations. For example, you're allowed to kill in war. You're allowed to kill criminals. Police allowed to kill criminals to defend the innocent. You have to look at hunting in that context. There is no society that doesn't disapprove of murder, because if you don't disapprove of murder, then you don't have a society. You don't have the basic physical safety that makes it possible to have society. And there is also no society where killing is forbidden, because for the same reason, if you're not allowed to kill, you don't have a society. So really the question is not, is there a contradiction between opposing murder and allowing killing? There is no contradiction. There is no other practical option. So the question becomes, when is killing murder and when is killing not murder? If you think about the Bible, of course the Bible is mistranslated into English as thou shalt not kill, and that's not what it says. It says thou shalt not murder. So when is killing murder and when is killing not murder? And I think it's very helpful in that context to consider the opposite position, because Roger, of course, was a conservative, like I think many English conservatives. He would, of course, he opposed murder. He would support hunting. But I think it's instructive to look at progressives, who also oppose murder, and they oppose the death penalty. Sometimes they even oppose killing in war, and yet they support abortion. And abortion is the killing of an unborn baby. So obviously, if they thought that's murder, they wouldn't support it, would they? So why do they support it? Well, the argument it goes something along the lines as an unborn baby doesn't have rights. Really, it has to be deeper than just it doesn't have civic rights. Because if you have, for example, some alien, some person who came into the country, a tourist, for example, not even talking about someone who came into the country illegally. Even if they came into the country illegally, by the way, you're not allowed to murder someone who is in the country illegally. So these are people who have no civic rights within this society. They still have certain rights. You're still not allowed to kill them. So a fetus, according to the pro-choice position, has even less rights than that. So it's not simply that they've not deserved the civic rights that come from being a member of this society. They don't deserve rights in some more fundamental way. What some people would call universal human rights. So a fetus doesn't have universal human rights. Now, why does a fetus doesn't have universal human rights? Well, because it's not a human being. Now, why isn't a fetus a human being? Well, that's a difficult question to answer, isn't it? Because genetically speaking, it is a human being, and at some point, it has the physical structure of a human being, and it certainly will be a human being when it's born. So it becomes kind of murky how exactly you can justify that judgment. And really the judgment, I think, most basically is that the fetus is not a person. So it's not about human being, but about personhood. Now the issue, of course, with all of these arguments is that by any of these tests, animals that you hunt don't have the right not to be killed. Certainly, if a fetus can be killed because it's not a human being, then you can hunt non-human animals and kill them. Certainly, if a fetus can be killed because it's not a person, then you can hunt animals that will never be persons and kill them. So if that's the basis of your argument, then it's not very strange that you could oppose murder and support killing. All the pro-choice people, not all of them, there are other pro-choice positions, but many of the pro-choice people actually, I think, have no basis to argue against killing animals. It's clear that The same arguments that allow you to kill a fetus allow you to kill a fox. Now, there are other arguments that could be made. That also, one of the other arguments is the argument from suffering. You're not allowed to cause suffering to beings that can suffer. And again, the problem, there are two problems with this argument. And the case of fetuses can really illuminate this issue because, one of the things that they talk about is that fetuses can feel pain. And so when you kill them, you actually cause them pain. So by that argument, maybe you're not allowed to. But then there is the antinatalist argument that says that actually living a normal human life is much more painful than dying in the womb. It's actually causing more suffering to let a baby be born than prevent it. But again, if you transfer this to the case of animals, then what do we know about animals? Well, animals don't. What's the line? They don't go peaceful in that good night. Animals are eaten by other animals. That's how they die, pretty horribly. It can take. Sometimes a lion will eat a boar alive. It can take hours before the boar dies while it's being eaten. That's not the worst of it. The worst of it is animals that are eaten. As Roger actually talks about that. He says animals that are eaten by things larger than themselves are the lucky ones. The unfortunate ones are those that are eaten by things smaller than themselves. Think about animals that are eaten alive by maggots and actually, have their bodies rot while they live. They're being consumed by these little creatures that burrow into them. So death in nature is very, very horrible. And one thing we know about animals that we hunt is that we save them from natural death. So by the antinatalist argument that would justify abortion on the pain calculus, we would be justified in hunting all the animals to save them from natural death. Now, clearly, I think all of these arguments kind of miss the point. They're all very strange. They're all missing something very basic because they're all ignoring the fundamental issue, I think. And if you engage with any of these arguments, then I think you're kind of missing the point. And I think the point is we should look at life as with piety. I think that's the fundamental argument. We should look at life with piety. Life is not just raw material. We should have a certain respect for the natural world. The natural world is not something that we created and that exists for our pleasure. It's something that created us, and we have duties towards it. Chesterton said that looking at nature as a mother and a goddess is idolatry. And nature actually doesn't deserve that kind of treatment. But he did say nature deserves to be treated as a sister, right? And there are certain things you wouldn't do to your sister because we have ties of pious obligation towards our family. And I think the noblest reason to have a certain distaste for hunting is this feeling that, why are you killing your brothers? These creatures are, to an extent, our brothers. But then again, you will find that, in war we kill our human brothers. So obviously, under certain circumstances, we're allowed to kill our brothers. And then hunting really becomes a question of what kind of moral framework it's embedded in. So I can give you an example. For example, historian Paul Johnson talks about the history of the United States and how the United States came to dominate the American continent. And one of the things he describes there is that people who came from Europe just couldn't believe the amount of wildlife there was in America, all over the place, endless and endless amounts of wildlife. And he describes that what they did about it is they just massacred them for no reason. They would just shoot ducks out of the sky, and create these huge bloodbaths, fill lakes with corpses and blood, and do all kinds of awful things. And clearly this kind of reaction is not a pious reaction to nature. And this thought comes to mind of what Roger says, that good things are easily destroyed but are not easily created, right? So you have this miracle of wildlife in America, and what do you do with it? Well, you destroy it for fun. But hunters are not like that. Those are not hunters. Hunters don't destroy for fun. Hunters actually have a much more complex relationship with their environment. At the most basic level, hunting is about feeding the human community. or ridding the human community of dangerous animals that harm the community. So in the one case, you can see it as a kind of war, hunting lions, for example. Kings used to have this job of hunting lions. It was a thing that they would do. There's, in the British Museum or in places like that, you would see great friezes, great stones carved showing you, I don't know what, Babylonian kings or Persian kings hunting lions, and you have lions lying dead all around the king, and he's in his chariot throwing spears at them. And it's very exciting images. And these lions, of course, are lions that the king had in his park. He had this huge park with lions in it, so he could hunt them as a pastime. But the origin of this was that people like kings, or people like Hercules, for example. If you think about Hercules had his great labors, but most of these labors were getting rid of dangerous wild animals that threatened the community. So, that's war. Getting rid of lions so they don't eat your children is war. When you're talking about hunting animals for food, well, that's something else. Hunting animals for food, first of all, it's survival. It's preserving the life of the human community. But the other thing about hunting animals for food, if you think about it, is that hunters who hunt animals for food have an interest that their prey doesn't go extinct. So they will do all kinds of things like protecting the natural habitat of the prey and making sure not to kill pregnant animals, making sure not to kill underage animals. So actually, they will make some efforts to preserve the animals that they are hunting. And Roger makes the point that in modern conditions where we are in absolute control of the entire earth, most animals can survive unless we have some interest in preserving them. So some animals we have interest in preserving them because they're useful to us as domestic animals. Other animals, like foxes, are pests. They're harmful, they're dangerous. They harm farmers. They steal chickens, Roger was a fox hunter. So in one sense, you could say it's the old war between man and fox. But in another sense, the only thing keeping the foxes alive is the fact that people are interested in foxes surviving so they can hunt them. We used to have a war with foxes where actually the foxes had a chance, right? And back then you could say it's just a war. These days, foxes don't have a chance. If we wanted to, we could just eliminate all of them. We don't want to. We enjoy hunting them. And that's what gives them a niche in the human world. So it's a complicated business. Roger has all kinds of things to say about that. He says, for example, he thinks it's much fairer to a fox to hunt it with dogs, like they do in traditional English fox hunting. Foxes are used to run for their lives. It's what they're made for. It's much more fair to the fox than shooting them with a rifle. And, I don't know whether or not that's 100% right, but it does show you that there are other considerations here. I think the basic point is that we should treat the natural world with respect, but we can't have a naive Disney understanding of what the natural world is. Natural world is very cruel. We can't keep animals from horrible deaths. We can't keep them from killing each other. We can participate in a responsible way in the very natural fact that animals live by killing each other. And so do we.
Like and subscribe.